Hello world. Hello YouTubers. Hello non-YouTubers. This live video stream deals with subject streams where we are individuals grouped in together. It has now been tactically ulterior from how we are individually grouped in together by the identity of value progression. That is the one that is all things at the same time. That have been, that are now, and that to an extent we know are to come. Boxing is fun, one way. Bad prayer. Boxing. It teaches things. If let, let's not forget. So, for example, the media, when you catch them as forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, as certain type of victim, knave, relevant, where, for example, those overt slash simultaneously insidious examples of where Americans, A through Z, have been prevented short words proper and correlation proper and honesty proper, while everyone pretended other. Has to do, they have excuses too. Those excuses too are effectively employed, even when real, because there's a certain type of victim slash hyper victim that is only allowed to be manifest by the laws and by the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and insidiousness of A through Z as it had been employed and then sustained against Native Americans, A through Z. Individually grouped too, consciously, individually grouped in together. What is voiced for humanity, again, tactically ulterior from what humanity's volume slash S science is. It is one volume science as the species volume. It is one's volume science where we are grouped areas, ages, sexes. It is in demonstration of how it is the electrical engineering, for example, of five distinct, non-distinct, and hyper-simultaneous identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature. Nature is demonstrating that we need to syntactically observe, also increasing conjunctions as value, where value is nature, nature is value, to where to how cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall slash S are bound. There is an invisible hyper slash hyper invisible body of value. Discernment. We're only even with it's only the minimalist portion of itself. It is, for example, as the hyper invisible, but still discernible to an extent, but one way. It becomes completely discernible. For example, nature is there are all kinds of proofs we'll get into with this of how it wants us to, and this is how computers work. So, in other words, it's an identity of value slash value progression that we are, humanity has three identities of volume that are equal. As the extent of itself that is constant and only increasing as one identity of value that is inseparable from all other identities of volume because that's its identity of volume. Just like our identity, our bodies have more than one identity. We have right hand, left hand, distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature, also non-distinctly. The value of truth as it really was before the order of the finite that we could deal with and know now to an extent. It's only it's only increasing its value per where and how it has complete possession slash hyper possession over our syntax nature. us, therefore, how we are hyper simultaneously, linguistically manifest. I tell it best, vaccines. And so how we're actually functionally being slash IAS beings. I teach us things, but long vaccines to gain what square, to gain what shape, to live with circle too. You know, to see what's in the way. For example, where we have only heard at all formal fact-checking nature locations, opinions regarding business and economics, finances, things like that, value nature. These are this is through systems that left out exceptions in exception nature, how and why our founders had to leave out their communications at the time and then supplement their communications onto the forced words and forced hiding how they had the roles, getting said that the Constitution should be unabridged and that it should be Marbury versus Madison, all appearances of justice. See, real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice. See, a breaching method measured and maintained and then shows where they had the high likelihood, though they were used remotely at all formal evidence locations with the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, killers, people next to the body, only spots. All investigators, and campuses are being and having been used remotely relevant to the short words like this. In other words, one thing that is hyper evidential is where and how we have black pupils, whites of eyes, and exceptions, and exception nature has different color eyes, where and how nature answers our questions. And it gets the same nature that gives them simultaneously. So even though where we have only even all the earth together, where we have only the minimalist extent of as we hyper additionally as each other too, earth and ourselves. Because everything, this is where value is only increasing, where value is nature / nature is value. The ancients more probably simultaneously more more practically and simultaneously more demonstrably. And simultaneously, those three increasingly, English was revealed to teach this. And so it uses exceptions and exception nature distinctly from anyone else. It as the identity of its identity of relationship to itself. So its identity of relationship to itself, wherever even the smallest extent of itself is, its complete identity of relationship to itself is only imperfectly increasingly valued. It is a constant that way. And the value of that is too, distinctly, non-distinctly, and hyper-simultaneously as itself. The identity the ancients revealed, more probably, again, more practically, and increasingly discernibly. English to teach about the identity of evolution. I can't go back to remember what I just said. In other words, but this is what English is revealed to teach. The top of the Z is pointing back towards A. And the bottom of the Z is pointing away. Lethal high Ds. And this is where and is how Earth has an especial difference that nature is showing us to answer our questions. Like why and how. Difference is manifest. Why and how it was manifest with the syntax. Therefore the functions. Where American history was a revolution from a criminally foreign influenced breaching method that had been entrenched with slavery since before our founding parents were born, before their parents were born, and they had designed the suburbs tactically denatured. And aware of this being and having been sustained against Native Americans individually grouped and together, tactically employing other only capable of being remembered, where and how they were replacing. They were not only stealing their education, memory, and ours, human education, memory of the value of sequence true before. The order of the finite now is its own distinct order. There is the order of the finite that goes with this, but as a distinct identity of order. Non-distinctly too, but that's what keeps it non-distinctly is that too, which is part of which how we can discern. Please learn, So pantheism was more probably about the ism is a semi-nature. So it can be negative value nature without its conjunction, to the identity that is temporary positive automatically to all parts of space/existence. But then it is further positive or negative. And to Earth's a special difference distinctly from our own, and as our own, and as that group, where we are its shared body. So where value is nature/nature is value simultaneously, we can discern how it is in an identity right to left, distinct from how it is in identity right to left to right. Inseparable from anything we could make up, inseparable from, and has the value of this smallest distinct detail being what it is. But as the relativity to it, to that which can't be made up. See, a breaching method employed all forms of formal logic, all forms of identity, therefore names. Knowing, for example, too, hyper simultaneously that we are simultaneously speaking also as the voice, as voicings of the ground and of its identity of relationship to itself. Again, where we are grouped, its identity and not. And what keeps it so to show, for example, where and how the identity of everything at once uses exceptions and exception nature in a way that can't be mimicked. I mean, that can't be, can't help it. Anymore. That's where everything is, but it can't be, it can't be mimicked. That's what everyone tries to do. But now it's through system, these, in other words, a bridge. We're not being led by that which is actually capable of leading us. By this is a scientific method that uses only what is true always, not denying the slightest exceptions, not denying the value of exception nature. Bullying, for example, is involved with sequence shifts, self-value, where and how the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts and locations, acts and natures, at all locations, areas, and states. Our founders communicated for us to demonstrate that there was a hyper-criminally foreign influence uses of all the roles as archetypally criminally foreign influence and it is regular criminally foreign influenced human fact treatments, human fact treatment nature. Now, so the maths as their and they share value towards and value shares like the identity. For example, this breaching method employed the sciences individually grouped and together or bridged. Ground conjunctions and names because it knew formally it's what it was. It was a breaching method against the colonists because it was already that's why they came here, and not even they don't even remember the English, the history of English properly. The Italians don't remember the history of Italy properly. Everyone has the psychiatry, we're involved with where and how the sciences individually grouped and together became criminally foreign influence. And the republic for which we stand, America, and other nations, your republics, your schools, through your schools was left entrenched, where and how all identity of the ground locations, voices it knew would be, we are voicings for the ground, simultaneously learn how we are voicing for ourselves so we could use correlation. So we have a correlation. We are different colors and not. So we could see correlation. But now those truths were applied to other meanings. In other words, and everyone's missing what is only increasingly going to be demonstrated here. All acceptance, exception, nature are in demonstration of the same thing. In fact, science reveals Leith of Hadith is a scientific, is more probably, and is increasingly demonstrably, having been a scientific variable / constant, where how the science of pantheism, again, it comes with prayer. I didn't use the word prayer. I was still saying it just slowly. We are forced to entertain, ourselves not allowed to use short words properly. And there's an aside syndrome, for example. I am not a doctor. The mental health care field has roles with the locations with it, including their campuses, criminally foreign influence. So any doctors that are come into it, that are, they're going to stay with this. This is a method that has been planting evidences between campuses. This has complete possession over all identities of sophistication, of all identities of power, might. No matter how powerful a leader could get, they have to stay over locations, areas, and states, already having been self-valued, tactically, criminally foreign influenced, factual nature, qualities, aspects, names, uses of the identity of ground locations, voicings too, extinction, voiced as other than nature wants us to voice as it. It took all the time to have those things here for us to let them go. For the people that, they're forcing blame. We're from off all locations. Increasingly, there was collusion / S with all that been negative value nature, progression, acts, and natures. We know the statistics. Collusions, for example, preventing what is hyper evidential from being voiced. And so they increasingly have to pretend other. And a breaching method measures and maintains this. we're the only identities that very few people understand about how conceptions, formal and informal, of overt of phrases like criminal enterprises as groupings, but also as natures, as criminal insidiousness natures. This breaching method knew that formal fact-keeping natures would stay collusions with itself, way worse than witch trials, way worse than slavery sickly distinctly against every colonist, and then sickly distinctly sustained against Native Americans. And then we became a country with this still going on, a breaching method that had already employed colonies A through Z individually grouped and together. And together is only controllable through and as what we voice for and as humanity. So they have people getting involved and saying and doing whatever at locations and online and with news broadcasts, pretending to be about freedom of press, freedom of, as means to pretend not to realize they have roles with federal rules of evidence as crimes, organized, juxtaposed natures of organized crimes, relying upon finite details left out where actually sequentially true came first. Because, for example, we have consciously nature telling us from the youngest ages one thing about what race and culture means and identity. And we have schools and people that don't know us who are pretending other behind our backs. And then people arose with making fake exceptions in demonstration of the same thing. But they're getting away with it because we're how the time treatments at formal fact treatment nature locations. And our others, sickly distinctly, but also non-distinctly, using time something too fast, too slow, to get over on people offensively, preemptively, actively, and increasingly. Preemptive means that there's an identity theft, fraud, slander method against every human being. There's a reason people fight so hard to make blamed anything else besides the identity theft, fraud, slander method against. That's exactly what we know to an extent. That the laws, the summary of the laws, the summary value of the laws of colonization and of early states, what were and our Jim Crow laws were about. There are evidences manifest and demonstration of where and how a breaching method would effectively measures and maintains countries individually grouped and together. Used self-valued roles used remotely by hyper sophistication. They need to pretend other as the only sophistication. It's not hard. So it is shown needs to. It knew that the breaching method knew that they would have to hide that out of their locations. Increasingly incapable of having the short words that each age is capable of understanding regarding American history, for example, from having them understood. So they have treatments of subject treatments like Jim Crow laws, like the names associated with American history, used by a breaching method to measure and maintain all kind of ways, where and how, what is said in nature, and can't be defended and simultaneously defend themselves or anyone else from what really is worst and most behind the array of things with negative value nature progressions, action natures, that there are more of with statistics than there are streets in our towns, in our cities, not by accident. For example, in our faces, overtly slash insidiously. We have to counter differential criminally foreign influence. Because the same people that are interbranch are when they are legitimate, trying to test things, those people are already involved with the uses of what they do when someone tries to express. I mean, not to express. That's the word that we want used. When someone voices short words proper regarding correlation slash discorrelation in our means, wherein how we little kids have means and adults have means to discern experts dishonest and or using truths for lies and or valuing truths used for lies and or valuing difference used for lies. They have employed the differences in fact treatment nature summaries. Oh, this is just something because I was doing a video. That's how I speak, because that's how the people like the audience to receive it. The audience wants when we say things like people have been fabricating audio and video on and off the schools and with the interbranch government. We want that fixed. They switch names. We want that fixed fast. You see what I'm saying? That's what people want. People, they're employing lies used for truths. I saw a video recently on YouTube with the FBI speaking in Congress. And they're like, oh, they're playing a game. They're playing a shell game where time is being and having been used simultaneously too fast, too slow to get over on forever nature, which our identities are. To an extent, this is discernible. And who would deny it is going to have inherent active and progressive with their fact, human nature, qualities, aspects of nature, demonstration of the same things. As we know, if anyone would deny that Jim Crow laws are about abridgments of the course of black pupils, whites of eyes, and exception nature, where and how nature answers our questions, but we don't have free speech to defend that. And because of how preemptively overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the branches of government, and all exception nature tied to them at the same time, they were kept needing to hide the same finite, active, progressive lies increasingly better than perfectly as collusions with that breaching method that American history is about, that other countries' history is about. We're in a semi-ancient trap. To defend themselves, the founders of modern countries had to ally with other countries without realizing it was to force, check, hurt, persuade them to defend themselves in the sciences abridged, where and how we are now individuals grouped together as names. Therefore, tactical terrier from where and how we are, per the way that it answers our questions, the same ones it gives us at the same time. In the same way it stays valued distinctly from our systems. See, the breaching method set up the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, action natures, after it had tactically denatured the American landscape, the other countries' landscapes, means to cause positive value nature progressions, action natures, as demonstrated by its system. It made the only means to cause positive value nature progressions, acts and natures, more and more criminal insidiousness natures of positive treatments and identities of criminal insidiousness natures of positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. So there was a theater to politics. There was a criminally legalized criminal insidiousness that they smile with. That when they frown, it is manifest. They cannot handle the simultaneous. Emotions and passions are about the simultaneous. Otherwise, they're about negative value nature, progressions, acts, and nature. See, we have the value of what is actually simultaneously recorded and on time, true and timely. So we have to address the evidences planting and cover-ups against innocent people and against people that did wrong or whatever. You know, violence is something else than hurting someone violently. Yelling at someone violently is something else than hurting someone violently. See, they want to keep subjects separated because they want to hide what comes first. And they want to hide what they've been putting fake before that. So we can't leave out how overt criminal enterprises, private ones, insidiousness of people A through Z. They have recorded collusion at corners of streets, or corners of buildings. There are still further people non-verbally recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. Further with the intelligence community, with the corners of Griswold Street and Fairlane Drive, and with Fairlane Drive and Carriage Hill Drive, where they have impossessions against those families. You know, torture of them roles method, where this slavery method is also relevant, where they have this fact-due nature slavery of our founders still left out, where they had to counter-extort the other founders, and why and how. Because everyone's voice and syntax was measured and maintained by laws that made it impossible to not entertain all kinds of things and to say all kinds of things. You know, otherwise you're not going to survive. That you didn't want to say. The laws forced that as means for the individuals and groups, also the victims of that breaching method. It's a slavery method. No one wanted to be part of the roles of that. The exception nature were made up for them to keep the breaching method from being measured and maintained, being demonstrated by nature, partial apart with all these subjects. But that was all those subject treatments and natures were making and keeping all the syntax to screen that. Even when right, even when, you know, see, truths can be used for lies. And our founders left us to demonstrate how reading criminally foreign influence, readings of statutes and self-valued roles of that wouldn't do exist. So even if fentanyl stuff was made up by the news media, it has roles with news media predicate acts on-off Central Connecticut State University, on-off Trinity College, that they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed as roles with courts of Connecticut and their family members and intimate ties. And a whole bunch of people tied to the people that grew up around me and lived at other spots where I did, where and how they influence sense and sensibilities. They make all victims / hyper victims with the FBI and state police and Weathersfield police and different departments and their family members. They have roles spreading lies, they have roles with identity theft, fraud, slanders, and uses of that, where there are fact, treatment, nature, predicate acts, methods that are many ways way sicker than poor people of all ages, even they put in jail, even rich people. And those jails are recorded with names and their campuses' names, all kinds of names, tied increasingly certain type of victim, that predator slash hyper victim, hyper predator, blaming other things, others themselves, not by accident, for the breaching method. And valuing that, and where that is increasingly having been, those are increasingly names and natures, increasingly valuing having been, where roles with those entrenchments, the entrenchments that made it then kept effective, that breaching method where formal criminal insidiousness, overt criminal enterprise, private ones, and the insidiousness of people A through Z would collude. And, where and how, especially differentially, the overt criminal enterprises and the counters to them as they interbranch and exception agent to them. They're used as a shell game upon us. Their roles with on-off campuses, federal rules of evidence as crime methods. Fox News did and CNN did good reporting and bad reporting in ways they won't let demonstrated because of the identity theft, fraud, slander method roles. Uses of experts and evidences treatments that are criminally foreign influence, timed increasingly to effectively to keep out what is hyper evidentially from being discerned, and to keep out what evidences treatments and investigations worse are actually used for. They have treatments of obstruction of justice by the January 6th committee, recorded as involved with the torture method that was in place before the World Trade Center attack. That World Trade Center attack names had and have roles with Connecticut military. Washington, D.C. has people involved with Patton Boggs, with a Robert Cheverry. They're next to the state capitol in Wethersfield, and a Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organization Act. 3 of his co-defendants in a 2006 district court case colluded with predicate acts with their family members and people intimately in other ways tied to them. Also on-off corners of campuses I went to, with confessions and with questions, and then they run away from the response and then pretended I know those people. Also with complete strangers. And this is increasingly brought up where and how people from the campuses that I went to from the youngest ages increasingly keep getting involved with lies and illusions that are also connected to people there were real quick instances with on campuses from the youngest age. And there were recorded criminally foreign influence uses of that, criminally foreign influence uses of readings of statutes that allow people to lie about others with elections, even of unions, because there are the local 230 has a whole bunch of people involved on and off Trinity College with the DeMauro family and with Rick Cianfaglione, with the O'Brien family, and with mayors like a former Mayor Gold and other mayors that had my name used with them that are hiding in backgrounds because they're preventing mandated law, and they're changing what people say and fabricating audio and video evidences at interbranch locations to hide what they were doing before the World Trade Center attack in that context and since, and with the investigators of it. A whole bunch of countries use phrases like conspiracy theory, criminally foreign influence, where they're putting fake things in conversations, including where there are real conversations, but they're also making completely fabricated conversations to just put things to keep investigators use criminally foreign influence. They're hiding behind how they have all these other countries with the campuses with them, and how they switch and forge names and prevent writing criminally. They use charges on arrests where the courts and the arresting officers in their campuses were already criminally involved with uses of the locations relevant. See, but you know the words. There are other ways, and they use and self-value uses of phrases like criminal, like conspiracy theory too. Know how President slash Chief Kennedy said that there was a conspiracy against this country. That was simultaneously an overstatement, apparently only where it is criminal insidiousness involved, and it is an understatement, increasingly simultaneously. There is worse than a conspiracy theory alone against this country, against each modern country. This breaching method knew that all location scenarios voices would have to counter something called criminal insidiousness, and that he knew that they would counter it wrong. It would have to counter something called criminal foreign influences, but they knew they would counter it wrong. So further consolidating locked to uses of our country's names and representatives of ourselves, now increasingly tactical terror from our individuals grouped together. So there are the Moro families from Italy who are involved also with Wethersfield Police, Rocky Hill Police, State Police, FBI, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, military families, medical families, involved with wire crimes, mail crimes, methods. They pretend he said, she said means anything. It doesn't matter. I don't care if they made up everything. They are recorded involved with wire crime acts and methods. Uses of the Constitution abridged, uses of the sabotage of kids' educations by the people that are only there to do it, class placements affected by roles with various natures of organized crimes that police forms mixed on and off the campuses involved with this have. It is relevant to where and how the shootings have a trend toward the campuses. They've been used in the campuses to fabricate things in the databases, to hide life progressions from other locations, where and how increasingly they need to pretend they have integrity they didn't have. This is also relevant where and how roles with that are roles with uses at corners of streets, as people involved with uses of corners of buildings and exceptions of that, where and how their roles planting evidences so things can go before interbranch locations that are already having been used criminally for an influence and already kept as natures that don't have the integrity to counter that. Our founders left us to demonstrate that. Forgiveness, the church left us to demonstrate that. Forgiveness is not to give up. It's to blame the hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. There are proofs. This is why even the stewards of the Old Testament and of the Quran, they want to keep it about psycho things from the back parts. Rather than, I didn't even read the back part. I only read the parts that says all I need in the Quran, and in the Old Testament says all I need to know is right here. You have to agree to call the identity of the hyper-simultaneous, for transliteration, Allah or not. And you're not supposed to pray in a mosque for the slightest reason. So there's a problem. You guys are, same thing with the Old Testament. It says all you have to understand is right to here, where the people of the sciences will come together. So you guys don't defend subject treatments proper. You guys don't defend the value of sequence with reason because of your roles with abuses of each age of logic, each age of correlation nature, sickly, distinctly, criminally, foreign influence, slash hypercriminally foreign influence. And that slash is increasingly with the other ones. Wow. All the other round. So someone please get this message to the Fox News people and to CNN and to MSNBC, because they use wire crime acts and methods where the FBI has roles with Wethersfield Police, State Police, forensics locations. Even when I caught them with crimes with child offenders, people on the child offender registry. And then when you talk about it, they start making up fake child abuse registry stuff and try to start having people pretend passions and emotions. They pretend they're recorded pretending they care about the integrity of the FBI. They have roles keeping the people psychopaths with mass groupthink where they have protests and things like that, because you guys aren't following the rules. You guys have both political parties criminally foreign influence and the exception nature measured and maintained collusions. You can't afford how our founders and nature itself wanted and needs us to communicate about where and how. When people speak about economics, finances, things like that, value, nature, identity, they can't afford the order of the finite, and they're pretending passions and emotions too. That's the important thing too, because then they're speaking about passions and emotions, they're lying. And these are the people pretending to be against that. You guys are telling the little kids not to, you guys are for measuring and maintaining how they're going to react, not for the reasons they're pretending, with the little magic tricks and the databases connected. So there are people with their Connecticut campuses. When I went to, I'm keeping things peaceful. These are people that make you either do anything to lie about your behavior in response to instances. And this is recorded, but you have to discern how it's recorded by discerning the sequence shifts, self-valued by their logic, and where and how they put fake conversations with me and others all along and ties between them. So there are a whole bunch of people with a Guerrero family and families and their extended ties and stuff like that. They know my names. I don't know theirs. I never had a conversation with them. But my teachers at different schools I went to, and other people make confessions, demonstrations, roles with them, with the Mayano family also, with various natures of courts and people on off the state judicial branch offices, also involved with confessions by a whole bunch of people tied to body dumping spots, different spots. They all had timed uses of their confessions regarding stuff, such. And as people who had been convicted of murder, like a serial killer, he was with the prisons associated with in Sandy Hook, involved also with people on and off Sandy Hook campuses and on and off a principal child abusers campus at the time and since. Further involved with the FBI criminally, there's a guy with the courts and counters to it with the Sandy Hook families and associations with them. They have some foreign and domestic medical families with mental health who have been messing with the kids and attaching the kids and their families to fake conversations with themselves and their family members. They've been using their roles with the programs with the kids and the elderly in the parks. Prepare your sharks. Let's fight. Boxing is mighty. Get them onto paper. Get this to Judge Napolitano. They're lying to him. And they're hiding behind, they have the roles with the schools, a whole bunch of other nations, time with them, with relevant to names. Eric Oliveri will tell you, I hope, the thing is that everyone was differentially criminally foreign influence. So in other words, they're watching each other closely, but they're missing how with self-value. Sometimes they're missing little details. And that's relevant where and how they have there was like communications from the FBI with Peter Strzok on the video I just saw of, and these are people involved with the name Cololo, with the policing influences of the policing over social media, including YouTube. They have people with the name Ray Colo that have that name shared, and there's a pattern of uses of that involved with abuses of kids of mixed natures, or including roles with the police forms with the schools. There are two Mendez police. I never saw them around each other, but they also attach me to fake locations, fake ties to the people that you know. In other words, these are people with the intelligence community. Forcing us to use the names of our neighbors and the people around us. And if we don't use it, they're keeping them roles because they want to hide about them, lie about their motivations, leaving themselves out. There are various natures of courts, names that are involved with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and names all along Route 3 and spots on off it that are involved also spying on little kids and forcing them to measure and maintain roles with wire crime acts and methods they have, identity theft, fraud, slander roles they have, because that's one of the things manifest. It is sickly, distinctly against every American individually grouped it together, where and how we have the increasing value and significance of having black pupils, whites of eyes, in all exceptions, and they're having been left out from the conversation. There are other motivations, natures, needs, and interests for that there than are apparent, and that's recorded too. And that's recorded relevant where and how they are preventing us short words, like Connecticut Interbranch switched names and fabricated audio emails. They have rules with passion crimes with people from Hartford courts and the Britain Superior Court that confessed, demonstrated, confirmed rules with federal rules of evidence as crimes. Also with former director of the FBI and co-defendants of his in a part of a 2006 district court case. Leading up to that, in that context and since, leading up to other legal cases in the context and since, they've been proven and further like these are people that are involved in Manhattan in the Ninth Circuit Court, insidiously planting post-dating already having been brought to the court and timely timestamped legal papers. They post-dated them to appear late from inside the Ninth Circuit Court right before the World Trade Center attack. The names involved with that were also names involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against me, as people I never even went to campuses with. Then they made a fake exception years later regarding their narratives regarding the years too, with a Claudia Scalora. And I never saw somebody Scalora on the campus of Central Connecticut State University in my life. He recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed online. He's involved with identity theft, fraud, also recorded with child sex offenders, and confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with dentists and a rah-rah read with the intelligence community, with shopping centers, intercities, one and along those roads and routes. He's also involved with the intelligence community on my street, planting federal evidence as crimes, identity thefts, and fraud, slanders. This is where and how investigators are having been used remotely, criminally, foreign influence through time. These are people involved with people from Italy and from other countries that also have switched narratives regarding what country they're from. They're also culturally charged, difference charged people that are also involved with that, with KKK themed and Confederate flag themed federal evidences crimes, with the judges involved too, female judges. See, we have the courts identities, and we have the executive branch's identities individually grouped in together with crime methods, where and how you guys hide and plot. I rap a lot, and so this is worse than extortion, knowingly. Where intercities, they've been planting evidences. They've been because they use where and how they are knaves with time treatments relative to the real causes of negative value, nature, progressions, acts, and natures. They are keeping them blamed on other things, others, ourselves, per their roles with uses of that to hide things and other motivations juxtaposed where tied to them, their neighbor, the conversations they have, little details for example, makes people leave out the finite that are formal fact-keeping nature. There's forced inclusions with uses of kids, just having people walk by each other at each age too. This is how sick, long they've been sick fakes, incapable of having a serious conversation, let alone litigation regarding the impositions of humanity, regarding what caused Jim Crow laws, vaccines. You see their things. So Weathersfield police have switching names and forging names, with male police officers and with female police officers sickly distinctly involved, and where they criminally force people to speak through others. And and they switch names on falsified police reports, where they put charges with no writing, criminally consciously, for a crime method, also per where and how they know that they already had to and have to, with personally, individually grouped it together with the members at the prisons, and at the other exceptions is tied to them, like places where you would go as an alternative to going to jail or something like that. Those places are in collusion with the people in the jail too, and with the courts too, and with the police forms, and with the politicians. See, the branch of the government, they have a Trantolo and Trantolo, who has a woman who brought up the word government, and he brought up the word conspiracy theory for her. And they're involved with wire crimes with WTNH and with the other news platforms, with judges and prosecutors who have been criminally fabricating audio and video. They've been roles with behavior racketeering, with child offenders, and with wire, per their needs to hide wire crimes, federal rules of evidences crimes, where and how relevant time treatments are used simultaneously, too fast, too slow, to get out wrong what is actually proper, legitimate logic, capable of defending itself and of affording the discernment or defense of Marbury versus Madison's nature of it, what it meant by real justice must satisfy all appearances of real justice, not these theater punk takes. Worse than the people they are in the furtherance of, torture of, since before the World Trade Center attack, which effectively was used to screen their motives for and needs for roles with that. So there are locations next to Hartford Hospital who have a whole bunch of names that are involved with a whole bunch of distinct natures of identity thefts and fraud, slanders against me through time, that are also being and having been recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, roles timed on and off campuses I went to, where they put little magic tricks in databases and apparent motivations juxtaposed with more than they realize relevant to differentially criminally foreign influence. And so respond for them. Weathersfield campuses have further people involved with the wire crimes, and some of their parents. Some of them making just mistakes because everyone's forced to speak to others. They're lying to the other parents, and they're keeping this extended so they have more and more kids involved. And these are families with elderly homes, and the programs with the elderly, and the sparks further. So let's get them on paper. Let's get them now. Vaccines, fake bridges, bow. So please, YouTube, get this to Judge Napolitano. I'll show you how to take care of the influences of the FBI on you guys. And Weathersfield schools, make sure I get a response, because Emmett, the name Emmett and Mike Levine are also names. And there are also more names on Maple Street, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, have been roles with federal crimes with the kids, with the principal child offenders campus, and further with uses of that, roles with that. We have further police forms, families and their kids that have further roles with other schools. And so their parents that are also involved with people next to those schools with federal crimes with the kids on and off campuses, and with the news media. I don't even know what these people look like, the people with the name O'Neill. There's people with the name Officers O'Neill that work with them, West Hartford schools, and they have roles with the confessions of the news media and some doctors. There's ones associated with houses next to on all sides of Weathersfield High School through time, especially that corner on the southern side of the school. They have people. They try to take pictures of people demonstrably to make it look like they know them, and they can't. And where and how they use time treatment simultaneously, too fast, too slow, to hide live progressions, where and how they've been used remotely at all locations, including interbranch. They are not isolated. Hello again, Ron Adams. I'm not a professor. I would have been by now, probably. I'm demonstrably. But since before the World Trade Center attack, a former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and Hartford and New Britain courts and other courts and their family members, they had roles with some predicate acts, fabricating information and fake illusions on campuses, fake ties between kids on campuses, for example, that are filmed 24/7. So, but no one's checking when the FBI use right to lie, where they don't have the right to lie, because simultaneously their uses of Saudis they forced to roles with them with collusions, also with people that campuses I went to from the youngest age, and where and how they were fact-check nature oriented. And see now where and how they can't afford that discerned is because all the countries involved with the uses of their names with litigation are incapable of defending that and of us at the same time, because they are systems now having been tactically ulterior from the system we are as individuals grouped and together as humanity. So they have recorded, confessed, demonstrated an extent of conscious uses of words like bullying, for example, where and how they pretend to be against what they are in the furtherance of, at the same time as federal rules of evidence is crimes, as identity theft, fraud, slander crimes. See, it's not by accident people will do or say anything to keep blamed on other things other than themselves, with things like racism, rather than let a voice call it identity theft / fraud / slander, or any one of those. But that's what it is too. Those 5 values, those 2 slashes value, where and how the identity of sequence shifts, is relevant where and how they have each age of correlation nature, sickly, distinctly a victim, and having been. See, there are adults with suits and ties and with counters to it that pretend that they heard anyone could speak for a practical reason, used Immanuel Kant's phrase. He did not have free speech himself. Short words are prevented if they are a nature that is not entertaining use or using truth as lie, used to screen lies. If they're not entertaining that voice is sensed and hurt and attached to fake words, changed words. See, where and how they put the president, they do this to the president to measure and maintain his and the counters to him, blaming other things other than themselves, where and how the breaching method affected that too. The breaching method furthers fentanyl problems, even if they're made up. Same way, even if the witch trials were made up, they're about criminally foreign influenced readings of statutes, precedents, and of the breaching method that was effective, manifest at all identity ground locations, areas and states, everywhere the sea species body is now. Every time they make a summary of history is inherent, active, and progressive with their reason. So it is hyper evidential that before, no one's here on here now. YouTube, please send me another viewer. New York City, New York City, please get me a response. We need them on here because they use wire crime acts and methods. The FBI and the Weathersfield Police and State Police are recorded communicating consciously. They use wire crime acts and methods, criminally foreign influence readings of statutes, and they have simultaneously relevant tactical physical delusions. So they better get on paper fast. Judge Napolitano, Fox News. Even though you guys aren't formally still together, this has been through the transition of that too. They have roles with this. In other words, they lied to you and they've been using your social media pages where they've been maintenance to where there's even a Facebook page of a mayor in Cromwell where they have it themed like they care about free speech. Or they feel they want to say whatever they feel. They're not saying we want to feel. They're covering up live progressions. They're pretending at locations and online that they tell the truth because they have roles with crime methods already recorded in cases where they have criminally foreign influence reading of statutes. They give the benefit of the doubt to the interbranch families. But before that, they left out exceptions, the exception nature where that is not relevant. These are also people involved with the World Trade Center many ways. Criminally foreign influence uses of it leading up to it in that context and since. And God forbid that against anyone. I know you guys are victims. You guys have former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on racketeering influence to corrupt organization act, involved with the Robert Cheverry, involved with a whole bunch of people with spots next to him, like a Maiano family. John Maiano said his family's involved with spots next to it, which is also confirmations of people involved with sequence shifts with him, attaching me to fake, knowing him or pretend that before I did, with people on my street involved further too, with the principal child defenders campus I caught them with. And these are people with mayors involved then and now. And these are people involved with the witness protection program and various natures of body dumping spots, also by the same names brought up with this. There's a family that also brought up spots in houses, names next to the state judicial branch offices, and also involved, and with town line, two-line drive, what is it called? Two-Rod Highway, where it runs into Hangdog Lane. They're involved and have been involved with identity thefts and frauds with investigators, judges and prosecutors, and people associated with that area. They didn't word it like that, but they also have the roles with names with the Dillon family and people associated with the body dumping spot, Billy Grasso, which is also involved with Joshua Stryker, who girls at Trinity College recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. He was spreading lies about me behind my back as a stranger that doesn't even know me. Would try to make some fake exception with people from UPS, with an Eric Oliveri and others associated with Trinity College, with investigators associated with former director of the FBI and various natures of federal criminals before they got caught. Even if they were establishing undercover identities, they had roles with predicate acts together through time, whole wire crime methods, child abuse methods involved with those wire crimes, and uses of the flag, where they have little fakes lying to people that went to my grammar school about me since I was a kid. And you're in a grammar school, you're not even in the same class as them, how you going to defend yourself? You know, they have all kinds of medical corruption and mental deficiencies associated with the legal identities interbranch and across the states. And it's right where we need to be. We see, we all know we love and need real healthcare people, real healthcare. See, we have we have a whole bunch of fake healthcare and corruption with the policing of the locations, and the lawyers are involved with rackets too. I'll show you. I'm not even a lawyer. I'll delineate their delusions from their criminally foreign influence natures and souls. So, presidents, former and standing, please get them. Give me a response on paper for them. Because these are people from my grammar school playing these games with the little tricks in the databases. And it's relevant because they brought it up with relevant recent uses of corners. And as people evolve further and criminally off the principal child defender's campus, I didn't even get to talk about the Rabbi Reed, why I called there. They made all these confessions. They said, hold on. Then they make a confession. They bring up all these different things. Then they pretend they didn't understand the person. And that's why there was all these conversations. And they were making fake emails at the same time. So, and they were planting it with the WTNH, fake conversations with WFSB people. As their roles of demonstrations, confirmations, they have roles with military, foreign, and domestic, on and off their spot in Rocky Hill. And they want, they want and needing to keep bringing in their personal involvements because they're playing games. I can't work until I get this taken care of. I need one name. You need to pick the name and sequence it to branch the forge and switch names with you. You gave me falsified police reports since I was a kid with no writing, little tricks, and you add confessions to it. Switch arresting officers' names. They have a crime methods with people associated with WFSB lawyers and people with ad placements with their country, with their timed with the news locations. Also further involved with the child defenders. And they're not legitimately hiding behind with their roles with the families on Church Street and Old Weathersfield with the intercampuses and roles with the acting professors, and this Heather Hansen with the wire crimes with the DeMorals and their neighbors involved with child offenders, overt criminal enterprises, private ones. I didn't know her when I talked to her on the phone. She knew. I don't know how she knew how I was. In other words. So they're forcing people to speak to other people from behind their back to pretend I knew kids that I didn't when I was in middle school, and then they try to make fake exceptions with the other. So they abuse these kids in ways that weren't legitimate, juxtaposed with legitimate ways, and they pretend the people are trying to speak about the legitimate ways that they bring up. These are things brought up by the all kinds of confessions by the principal child defender and the people involved with keep putting me on hold, and I never got to say what is still involved with the Robert Reed. And he's one of the ones further involved with the World Trade Center and the Ninth Circuit Court right before and spots next to the World Trade Center leading up to that context, in that context and since in Manhattan, as people involved with Washington corruption and corners of buildings and parks criminally through time with them too. They've been planting little fake evidences, illusions. Since founding, the FBI since their founding and since their inception, they were used criminally foreign influence, measured and maintained, blaming the other things, others ourselves, for what caused slavery. Roles, collusions with it, worse than criminal incompetence right through our schools. Wake up, fools. So Sandy Hook has roles with a whole bunch of people with other countries and courts and prosecutors and police forms and military and their databases, technicians, people associated with them also on, other locations through time, other campuses, not just prison campuses and kids campuses. So Central Connecticut State University has the roles with the criminal justice programs and professors that have roles with federal crimes of where they're allowed to, but they're using that as an excuse where they don't have roles with it. They have roles with the worst things with the statistics, more than there are more things in bad acts against people than there are streets in our cities. You have to let what's true always, not denying the slightest exception, not denying the slightest exception, lead. So pantheism could come with this programming better than a website. Well, but please Google, YouTube. Let's get them on paper. You can't call them You definitely can't go down there. They fabricate audio and video with Wilshire police involved with the FBI as our side with a whole bunch of other countries leading up to the World Trade Center attack in that context and since. Prepare, Mike Pence. Mike Pence, please respond for them right here. The January 6th people too. They have that. They have words. CNN, Fox News, where they do good reporting, they record it, confess, demonstrate, confirm. They're going to pretend other. Whether they communicate, but they use words like control, criminally foreign influence as collusions, not realizing too because they have delusions that are relevant. Again, why relevant is where and how why increasingly relevant is where and how why we have black people's rights survive. We trials, vaccines. It teaches things.